If your networking's not working, you're probably missing this one thing. I'm Greg. I'm the Introverted Networker. And today I want to talk about the one thing that's probably missing from your networking if you can't seem to connect with people or they're not getting back to you. I came across a LinkedIn post a couple weeks ago from Ellie Hoekman, and Ellie's a career coach up in the Pacific Northwest. She focuses on IO psychology careers and helping people with those get into that field of expertise. She posted this video that she made on Loom, which is the same product I use to shoot these videos. And I don't get anything from Loom for saying that. It's just a product I like and have used for years. But she posted a Loom video in her LinkedIn post that talked about a triangle of trust, meaning when you're trying to connect with people, if you're at the bottom of the trust triangle there and you have zero trust, people aren't going to likely connect with you. And her point was that at the bottom of the pyramid is text. So reaching out to somebody by email or other text-based message is the lowest level of trust that you can have when you're connecting with somebody because they don't know who you are. You could be a bot, you could be an automation, who knows? And we all get so many spam messages that we just kind of ignore all of these. So if you send somebody a email or a text-based message and they don't know who you are, they're probably not going to respond because they just don't trust you. And as you move up the triangle of trust, if you go up to the next level, it's audio. So if you left somebody a voicemail, again, if they don't know you, they're probably not going to trust you, but maybe it's a little bit more than text. And then moving up to like a video message, which is what Ellie was using, which is kind of like this. You're seeing a video of me, or you're hearing my voice in the podcast, or you're going to see the words I write in my newsletter. And then the next one is, one-on-one audio. So talking to somebody on the phone. And then the top level of trust is one-on-one in person. So the point being that as you increase those sort of go up the levels of trust, there's different ways you communicate with people. And again, her point was if you have to reach out to somebody, make a video, use Loom, use something else. It's going to give you a higher level of trust and they're more likely to respond. I put this in the bottom of my newsletter last week. And this is something I commonly do when I find things that I think are interesting and I want to share. I put them at the bottom of my newsletter. Maybe not the best thing, because what I find is when I go through my newsletter stats that the links at the bottom tend to get clicked the least, meaning you're reading my newsletter, you've read through maybe something I've said and you're done and you move on, or you don't even get to the end. And you don't see the things I'm sharing. And so I wanted to bring this back to the top of your mind and share it again, because I just thought it was such a great way of thinking about networking. And a key thing that a lot of people miss when they're networking is trust. Now, I know we all know we're supposed to trust people during networking, or we're supposed to work towards getting to a higher level of trust with our connections, because when people trust you, they're more likely to help you. And when they're more likely to help you, you're more likely to get introduced to the opportunities you're looking for. But how do you get that trust? And Ellie's point was around reaching out to people you don't know. So using technology, using a face and a voice on a video to be a real person, because then you seem more like a real person, somebody's willing to give a little bit of trust to have further conversation. As I think about it, I think that's great. And it made me think about other parts of trust. And when it comes right down to it, if people don't trust you, they're not going to respond to your message. If people don't trust you, they're not going to introduce you to people they know. So how do you build trust? How do you grow your network and achieve trust with people so that they will introduce you and your network can grow? And I thought back to the process I talk about all the time. And, one of the things for me is I start with people who already trust me. And this goes back to this first step in my process, which is start with who you already know. The reason why I say that is because there's already trust, most likely, between you and the people you know. I get it. We all have people in our life we don't trust and they don't trust us. I'm not talking about those people. I'm talking about the people who you worked with in the past, who you lived near in the past, who you went to school with in the past, who you interacted with on sort of a day-to-day basis, a regular basis, who know who you are. And when they hear your name, there's going to be some subconscious level of trust those people already have. They would respond to you if you reached out to them. So when Ellie is saying if you send somebody a text-based message, that's to somebody who doesn't know you. What I'm talking about is sending messages to people who already know you. They already trust you. They would be happy to get an email or a LinkedIn message from you because they trust you. You're not a spam message. You're not a random person who's sending them a DM who's trying to sell them something. You're not giving them a pitch. You're reaching out to them to reconnect. So in my point of view, you should start where you already have trust. You should start with the people who already know you. They're more likely to respond. They're more likely to trust you. They're more likely to have a conversation with you. So when you already have that, it's much easier to, again, move up that pyramid of trust that Ellie's talking about. And again, I'm just kind of verbally describing this. I'll put the link to this in the show notes, in the descriptions, and of course in my newsletter. I'll link to the video if I can, so that you can see what Ellie's talking about. Because again, it's a great concept. I love the concept. I hope that she gets around to seeing this newsletter or this episode. I told her I was going to include it last week. I'll let her know I'm doing more on it this week. But it really just had me thinking about how do you get more trust? And as I said, starting with who you know is a great place to start. So you think to yourself, like most people, when I say that, how am I going to grow my network if I'm going to just start with who I know? And that's a great question. And it goes to trust. What happens is when you reconnect and when you start having these conversations and you sit down and you listen to your person you already know who kind of already trusts you or really trusts you, depending on the relationship, and you listen to what's going on with them and you try to help them, they, again, want to continue the relationship and help you. And so what they're going to say is, how can I help you? And you're going to tell them, well, could you introduce me to people who work at these companies, or could you introduce me to this particular person? And with that, mutual beneficial feeling of trust there, they're going to introduce you to somebody new. So let's talk about that, because the introduction carries with it some trust as well. The introduction comes with an implied level of trust. The new person that you're going to get introduced to is looking at the person who's doing the introducing, right? So this is your connection. You talk to, they're trying to help you out. They're going to introduce you to somebody new. This somebody new, they probably already know. They're not going to introduce you if they don't know them. If they know them, there is trust between them. And so that trust carries over to you. Your connection wouldn't introduce you to a new person if they didn't trust you. And the person who's on the receiving end of the introduction trusts the person who's making the introduction. So that trust all carries through to make this happen. Because let's talk about it a different way. If the person who you're going to get introduced to doesn't trust the other person who's making the introduction, they're probably going to say something like, you know what, I don't have time right now. I don't really feel comfortable with this. I don't really know you that well, and you're trying to connect me to somebody new. They may not say that explicitly. They maybe imply it in some of the things they say. So if that's missing, the introduction is not going to happen. If it's there, it will. And most people, I find, try to respect their network, meaning they try to ask people first, as in saying to the new person, hey, I have a contact that would like to meet you. Are you open to this? And I would recommend you do this. If you're the one making the introductions, or if somebody's going to introduce you, you should even suggest this. Like, hey, do you want to reach out to them first to make sure this is okay? I just want to make sure that this doesn't, kind of land with them and they're feeling like they have to do something they don't want to do. So if you're the making the introduction, you should always go to the person and say, hey, I've got somebody who wants to talk to you. Are you open to that? And if they say something like, yeah, no problem, then, the trust is there. If they say, you know what, I'm kind of busy right now, I don't really think I want to do that, respect it. Don't force it, because you obviously don't have a high level of trust, or maybe they are really busy. And if you push it too hard, they're going to feel like you're taking advantage of them. and you have to go back to your connection and say, you know what, they're not really open to it now. Let's find somebody else to connect you with. If you're the one getting introduced, almost like I said, kind of insist, say, hey, I want to make sure you reach out to them and they're okay with this, because I don't want to come into this new relationship with any sort of bad feelings related to it. So those are a couple things around getting introduced. Now, when you get introduced, then your network's growing, and the trust that person had on your connection who introduced you to them transfers. And so this person looks at you, maybe not with the same level of trust, but they look at you as somebody they trust trusts you. And so therefore they're going to give you a bit of trust. Now, that doesn't mean they're just going to do whatever for you. You still have to establish the conversation and the connection, talk, about them, find out what they're working at, and try to find a way to help them. And as you do that, you get more and more trust in the relationship, and they become more and more willing to help you out. And so this idea of trust, it transfers it through relationships. It transfers from person to person, but you have to respect it, and you have to understand that you don't want to lose it by getting hasty is the word comes to mind, by trying to push things too far, too fast. You have to give people time to kind of get to know you and feel like you're somebody that they can talk to and that they're somebody who they can trust. So trust is the key in networking. And if you're reaching out to somebody brand new and you don't know them, think about some of the things Ellie talks about in terms of ways to build that trust. If you're working with the network that you already have, like I would always recommend, just be conscious of it and make sure that you're not abusing your trust or anybody else's trust. And that way, you're going to have lots of opportunities to meet new people. You're going to get introduced. It's going to become much easier for you. And it's not going to be something that, you really struggle with anymore when you're trying to grow your network. Hopefully that helps. Do check out the video from Ellie. Do check out the newsletter. Go through and see how that can impact your networking. I hope that gives you a good tip and some direction for the week. Go out there, try it out, meet some interesting people. What I always say is you got to go out there and ABC, always be connecting.